I got a bayonet in my hand.
Really?
Yeah, I took through here, and then I took a bullet through the face when I was in a helicopter, and then I took shrapnel in my shoulders and my legs.
Yeah.
And then I took a bullet in my leg.
Huh. What hurt the worst? Probably
Probably the one in the shoulder.
Really? That hurt worse than getting shot in the face?
Yeah, getting shot in the face. That's a horrible story. As we did the X-ray, the bullet broke into 3 pieces.
Mm-hmm.
It was an M16 round. It came through the side of the helicopter, and then it hit me through the fuel cell side. I had my feet dangling in the doorway, so it hit me and it knocked me down, and I came up shooting, and the bullet broke in 3 pieces. One of them knocked out teeth and cracked other teeth. The other one lodged right behind my nose, and the third one lodged way up in my sinus cavities. And I spit that one out about 2 months ago. I carried it around for 50 years and finally had a cough attack. It had migrated down and finally coughed that one up.
These are stories of outdoor adventure and expert advice from folks with calloused hands. I'm James Nash, and this is the Six Ranch Podcast. Like ranchers throughout the West, I'm spending the spring building fence, and it is an arduous task. The wire's heavy, the posts are heavy, the ground is rocky. You just break yourself into pieces. So to kind of psych myself up for the day, I pour a cup of coffee into a Stanley mug. I like the titanium series the best. And then I go out and I hammer posts into rocky ground. I stretch the wire. I get cut. You know, I try not to swear too much, and I work all day long. And at the end of the day, I'm going to pour myself a cold drink into one of the coolest products that they make, which is the Lifted Spirits Prismatic Rocks glass. When you pour your whiskey over rocks into a glass, the ice melts pretty quickly, it seems like. So having that insulation makes for a better drink, in my opinion. And then these things have a prismatic cut in the stainless steel at the bottom that is also really pretty to look at. And I think that that's part of the experience of enjoying a nice glass of whiskey. So there's 2 times during almost every day that I'm using something from this, great American company that's been around since 1913. They've got all kinds of gear on their website, and you can save yourself some money by using the discount code 6RANCH. That's the number 6 and the word ranch. It gets you 25% off. And then there's a 6 Ranch Outfitters collection on their page. There's a link to that in this podcast description. And that will take you right to a page that has all of the things that I like to use. Now, I don't make any money off this. It's not how most discount codes work. This is just a savings that I'm passing along to you. Stanley has been a sponsor of this show for years now. They've been so supportive. And if it weren't for that support, I wouldn't be able to continue doing this. So you can support the show and get a good piece of gear at a discount by using this discount code and buying something that you like or something that you think somebody else would like. So you can go to stanley1913.com, collections, 6 Ranch Outfitters, or you can look at anything else on the website, but use that discount code and save yourself a couple bucks.
My back would be shot.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be able to get off the bike.
My ass would be vibrating for a week.
It's
Sorry, you're recording.
No, you're good. It is amazing what kind of fatigue you get on a motorcycle, for sure. Like, I tend to overgrip if I haven't been riding a lot, and my hands will go numb, and then I know I need to relax a little bit.
Yeah.
How you sit on the bike and how you have the handlebars positioned and all that makes a big difference. Having a good seat makes a big difference. But what really fatigues me is my mind. You have to stay so focused.
Oh, yeah.
Because everything out there is trying to kill you the whole time.
Yep.
I had a pretty good adventure. It's an adventure motorcycle. I had an adventurous ride yesterday. So I tried to come from, Idaho to Montana, and, I'm not going to name names. So I went up a long river, and then I took a fork of that river. I was going to try and take a logging road into Montana, and I got all the way up there, and there was a rock slide, and I had to turn around. So it was a 140-mile detour. I was 70 miles from the turnoff.
Man.
So I turned around and I was scooting back down this road, and there's a lot of people that were fishing on this fork of the river, and I wasn't paying that close of attention to the fishermen, but I saw a little bear on the side of the road. So I zoomed over there, got off the bike, and chased it to see if I could run it up a tree, because that's the right thing to do. And instead of going up a tree, this bear like Supermaned off the road and landed in the river right next to a couple of guys that were fishing, and they were a little bit panicky looking about it.
God.
And then, here I am in like motorcycle gear and a helmet, and I was like, see ya, sorry. Got on my bike and zoomed off. And there was hailstorms and thunderstorms. It was a great ride.
Oh, yeah.
That's what
Good.
adventure motorcycling should be about. It's not just, going to Starbucks.
Yeah, my grandson does downhill bike racing.
Yeah.
And he's too big for it, but he does it anyway.
Yeah.
But one day he was in Washington, and he was riding this trail, and he ran into a black bear. Just smacked into him with a bicycle. And his friends were following him, and and he turned around and bailed over the edge, left his bike, and his friends are like, man, you went this way and the bear went that way. They said, we didn't know who was faster.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So you were saying that your dad was career Air Force.
Yes.
I just had a naval air traffic controller on here. Yeah.
Yeah, my dad was, I went to school in Spain, Guam, Hong Kong.
Okay.
And in California, then finally I graduated high school in Wenatchee. So
Okay. Interesting. Which of those places did you enjoy the best?
Guam, without a doubt.
Really?
1962.
Yeah.
The war hadn't been over that long. We could go through the jungle and pick up souvenirs. We found rifles, hand grenades one time, but that's a whole nother story. And when I left Guam, the next year, the last Japanese soldier came out of the jungle and turned himself in.
Yeah, I remember that guy.
He had been in there the whole time we were playing where he was at.
No kidding.
And never said, we never knew he was there. But as a kid, because you're diving, you're snorkeling, you're spearfishing, it was just a fantastic adventure.
Tell me a little bit about that guy, because my understanding is, his last orders were don't surrender.
Right.
And he took that seriously.
Yeah, I only know what I read.
Yeah.
It seems like, if I remember right, became a shoe salesman in Japan, or something to do with shoes. But he would go to the villages and steal food.
Yeah.
But he was smart enough not to hit the same village. He would hit them. They never knew when he was coming. He never took much.
Yeah.
A little rice, a chicken, stuff like that. So he survived there for what? War was over in 46. So he was there to 63, 64. So he was in there, 14, 15 years.
And, the Japanese government was aware of him, and they were trying to get him to...
Trying to get him to surrender, too.
Yeah, to come out, and he thought, well, no, that's propaganda.
Yep.
Not going to fall for it. In some ways, I have the utmost admiration for him.
Hands down.
In other ways, it's like, well, there's probably some mental illness going on here as well.
I think any soldier that's served and been through stuff like he went through, there's going to be some stress, without a doubt. But I've seen him interviewed since then, and he seems perfectly fine.
Yeah.
Of course, you never know.
Yeah.
You never know about those injuries and memories.
There are a couple of things that we talked about yesterday that I want to get back into. One of them was that you said the thing that you admire about Marines is you've never seen them back down. From a tactical standpoint, I'm curious about your opinion on this too, whether we're talking about a metaphor in life or an actual, bent towards your tactics. How important is that?
To never back down.
Yeah.
You got to be smart with it too, though. I think,
Right.
it's got to be, if backing down is a tactical advantage, you always got to take the tactical advantage.
Yeah.
Sometimes you got to give up a little bit of ground and take more ground.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I worked with a Mike Force for a little bit. We never went unless it was hot.
I don't know what that is.
Mike Force in Special Forces is anywhere from 40 to 80 men.
Okay.
And when there's a firefight going,
Yeah.
they'll drop you in.
Okay.
Usually to support other SF.
Okay.
But Marines or whoever was in a hot spot would get dropped. And I only did that for a short while, but a couple of times that we worked with Marines, and they were in a bad spot, real
Yeah.
bad spot. But, they were standing their ground and fighting and firing, and when we came in, we were obviously could, get them out because we had a bigger firepower than they had. But I've never seen one I wasn't proud of. And I hate to say that to another Marine.
Yeah, well, yeah, I can't claim much, right? Because so much of the reputation of what Marines are was built generations before me. I'm just doing my best not to disappoint them.
I think that's true of all military people. I had a stepfather named Wiley Sloman. He was captured on Wake Island in World War II. Through 5 days after Pearl Harbor. He spent 4 years in a POW camp in Japan. And he's written up in a few books, that are out there. And the stuff they went through, those Marines were just absolutely incredible.
They had a terrible time in the Pacific.
But on the Wake Island, if you read the books, the Marines they had blown off 2 invasion attempts. Mm-hmm. They had driven the Japanese back into the ocean twice. And they were doing it in the third time, and they'd already sank 1 battleship. On the third attempt, the Japanese were coming aboard. They were pushing them back out again when the commander gave the surrender. The Marines were just pissed like no end.
Yeah.
But
yeah, it's interesting. The Battle of Chosin Reservoir.
Oh, yeah.
Right? You've got a handful of Marines. They got essentially surrounded by over a million Chinese, and they didn't retreat. They just attacked in a different direction to leave.
Wasn't it Chesty Puller said, "Yeah, we're surrounded, and that's a good thing."
Yeah,
because we know where they're at.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what led you to the military?
I had a football scholarship to the University of Texas.
You did. That's a big deal.
It was to me at the time. I had visions of being a pro football player.
Yeah.
When I got to UT and looked at all the other guys that were playing, there was no way I was ever going to make the pros. And I wasn't sure I wanted to go to college and play. So I talked to a recruiter, not a Marine recruiter, an Army recruiter, and he talked to me that this is probably what I want to do, take some time and figure out what it was. And then I got deeper and deeper into it. And when I finished my basic infantry training, because that's what I wanted to do, I went off to jump school. And I had a 12-week layover between the Q school and jump school. So I went to Ranger school. Mm-hmm. So I was able to get through that. I thought I was in shape when I left jump school, but I wasn't close to being in shape. And then when I got to Q school, I still wasn't in shape.
Yeah.
Going through those guys. And it was just kind of a progression as I had to be, I don't know, just personality-wise, I had to be one of the best, I guess. I didn't want to be second anywhere.
That's a risky move when you're going through military training. A lot of guys are very successful who just hang out in the middle of the pack.
Yeah, but that's just never been my mentality, I guess. I've gotten smarter as I got older.
Yeah.
But, you know.
What about you, Payden?
What drove me to...
Yeah, 2010, I mean, that's kind of a goofy time. We're a couple of years into the recession. Not a lot of job opportunities out there. We've been, fighting a war for 8 years on 2 fronts.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, the biggest thing, I kind of had a deal with my parents growing up, whereas if I got a wrestling scholarship, I'd go to college and wrestle, and that's what I did and went, and it wasn't really what I wanted. Like, I was pre-med at the time. I wanted to be a chiropractor. Mm-hmm. So they didn't have a pre-chiropractic program then, so I was going pre-med, and it was good. School has never been really challenging, so I kind of could blow off classes and still maintain. I think I needed like a 3.2 to keep my scholarship. And then I blew my knee out for the second time wrestling and during wrestling practice. And that I was just like, you know what, I'm done. I finished out, had surgery, finished the season, and then on my way home, I was just kind of like, I don't know if this is what I want to do. I'm not really loving school. And then that's when there's literally the exit before my exit took me to the Jackson, Michigan Mall. And there's like a section there where they have all the recruiters, and I just kind of strolled in there and went to go in the Marine office, and it's, mirrored, so you can't see in. And I go to doors locked, so I'm looking at the pamphlet thing, and out walks the Navy guy, and he's like, "You want to join the military?" And I was like, "Well, yeah, kinda." And then we just started chatting, and like 2.5 hours later, I was scheduling a PST because I wanted to be a CB because my dad ran a construction company for my entire life. I'd been doing construction since I was like 10, 12 years old. I'll go be a CB, come back, take over the construction company. And then he was just like, the recruiter was like, no, man, that's not you. Try this. And it just kind of happened. It kept snowballing. And it went from just go do a PST, we'll see what you like and where you score. And like I said, I'd wrestled at nationals like 3 or 4 weeks before this. So I was in phenomenal shape still, and I was still working out. And I was like, sure, I'll go do a PST. And showed up, and I'd get to the pool, and they're like, you can do side stroke, combat side stroke, breaststroke. And I was just like staring at the instructor. And the instructor was a guy named Jeff Krause, who was I want to say he was a Green Beret Ranger, got out, and then went in and was a SEAL. He's written some books, and it's called like So You Want Me to Do What or something like that. It's pretty good. But he was a super cool guy. And he just looks at me. He's like, oh, boy, you're going to have fun today. Yeah. So they showed me really quick breaststroke and side stroke, and I just jumped to the pool and just muscled my way 500 meters of breaststroke. Yeah. I think I passed by like 4 or 5 seconds.
Nice.
Got out of the pool and did the rest and just crushed the rest, the push-ups, sit-ups, pull-ups, and the run. And that got me good enough scores where they're asking me to go do the C-sort. Do you know what I can't remember now what it stands for, but basically it's an aptitude test to see how likely you are to quit.
Okay.
So they were 0 to 4. If you get a 0, you're basically like, you're done. You're not going to get a contract. It's going to be, or if you get like 1 or 2, you'll get a contract, but it's going to be based upon increasing your scores. They'll say if you did 70 push-ups this time next week or 2 weeks when you do it, you need to get 75. Yeah. To show that you're dedicated. Yeah. And I took that and I had no clue, hadn't heard of the test before that, and I got a 4 on it. And guy walks in, he's like, did anybody tell you about this? I'm like, I've never even heard of this thing before. Walks out, walks back in. He's like, you got a SEAL contract if you want it. I was like, okay. So I went, did it and signed it. And the next day signed it. And then they told me it'd be like a year and a half before I left. And then I left like 2 months later. I was one of the top recruits. So when somebody dropped out, they just go to the list and they're like, all right, you're up. You won it. And I took the spot, and that's all she wrote. It was good. I got hurt in pre-buds. Yeah. Because I think it happened so quickly, I didn't have time to like harden my legs and my body for running and continuous running.
Did you get shin splints?
I got full-on fractures. Yeah. So I had shin splints. They turned into stress fractures, and I hit them for so long that they turned into full-on fractures.
Such a common injury.
It really is. I had, 3 in my right leg and 1 in my left leg. Yep. And when I went in, it was like 3 weeks before we were supposed to test out to go to Buds, and he was actually Marine. He was one of our fitness instructors, pulled me aside because he saw I was dropping back in runs. And he was like, you need to go get checked out because you're usually top of the group and you're kind of lower back now. And so I finally went in, and the lady was like, you're just a Buds dodger, like you're just scared. And so she went in, she was like, we're not going to do a bone scan. We're just going to do x-rays on your legs. So I was like, okay. So then it came back the next day. I go in there to meet with her. She's like, I just want to apologize. You don't have stress fractures. You have full fractures in your legs. Wow. So then I had to do 16 weeks of rehab where you're not listening to music, anything. And to test out of it, you had to do a 15-mile run on a treadmill. And that treadmill's just staring at a cinder block wall. It was worse than anything. I was like, if I can make it through this run, I can do it.
That's horrible.
Yeah. So I got rolled and then went to Buds, and from there on, I didn't have any real issues through Buds. Yeah. I made through everything first time. Got double Achilles tendonitis after Hell Week, which was pretty brutal, and then I got
that can take a long time to heal up.
I still deal with it today. It's been 13 years, 12 years.
A lot of hunters deal with Achilles injuries from packing out too heavy of a weight, and they think that if their thighs can get the pack off the ground that they're good, but it's their Achilles that blow up. And a lot of times it'll be the next day they'll go to get out of bed and then pop.
Yep.
A really common hunting injury.
I gotta be really careful with it because when I'm hiking and hunting a lot, my left Achilles just screams.
Now I know SEALs started during Vietnam. When did Green Berets start?
About a month before. Wait a minute, let me back up. Green Berets came from the old OSS from World War II. Okay. Some of my instructors were OSS people from World War II, and some of my commanders when I first got to Nam. So it got its official designation about a month before the SEALs got theirs. Okay. John Kennedy gave us all of that.
Okay, so all of those programs came from John Kennedy.
Yes.
Yeah, I didn't even know that. That's cool.
Huh. I'm sorry?
I didn't even know that they were that close together.
They are. They're that close together. In fact, a lot of it is, when you look at our our pledges and our papers and stuff. They're one stealing from the other.
Yeah.
That's just.
That was another thing that I wanted to talk about. Now, no matter what you do in the military, you take an oath of service going in. But depending on which branch you're in or which section of the branch that you're in, you've got additional oaths.
Yes.
I'll be the one to say it. There are some very prominent military figures in the public today who I'm embarrassed by, that I don't feel like are setting a good example of leadership. And some of them are going on to teach leadership courses, and they're in leadership roles. And I think it's a travesty. There is some humility that is programmed into the oaths that you guys both took. And I don't know if an oath is something you remember verbatim, but can you at least summarize what your oath was as a beret and as a SEAL?
As a beret, ours was simply do what our country tells us, promote the different types of warfare that we do, and to remain loyal to our country, and to I forget. I read it again last night, and I still can't remember what it was. But then I read the SEAL one, and it was a bit different.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit different than the berets, but I think to kind of summarize it, it's just about being a professional and a quiet professional, and just basically being the best, and always putting the best forward, no matter kind of what that is, what it entails, or anything you're doing within your life, whether it's the SEAL teams or beyond. And I think that's why a lot of SEALs get out and they are successful entrepreneurs. You see a lot of SEALs that aren't in the limelight that are very successful entrepreneurs because of the ethos that you're kind of raised under when you're doing it, especially like the really young guys that go in, like myself when I was 19, and I had one guy younger than me. So those guys, I think when you read that and understand that when you're young, and then you kind of grow up under it, it makes a big difference too.
Yeah.
There was one part of your oath that's not in ours that I took for granted is that you will never profit from your experiences.
Mm.
Yeah. That's obviously a big talking point. I mean,
well, we've got them from Special Forces also. I mean, we've got some people that wrote books they shouldn't have written.
Yeah.
There's not many, but there's enough to embarrass you sometimes. And one of them has contacted me to help write his next book, and I never liked the guy anyway, so I won't be involved in that.
One of the things that I think complicates this issue is there's a whole generation of kids that are growing up, and they're looking at these guys who are loud on the internet, and they think that that's what represents what it means to be a member of Special Forces, and it's inaccurate. So I think that it's important to talk about what it actually is, and that's a little bit about what I want to get into today, and then we're going to talk about knives. Within the Marine Corps, we're an itty bitty branch. There's more lieutenants in the Army than there are Marines in the Marine Corps.
Really, I didn't know that.
We're small. So when they say the few, the proud, the Marines, that really summarizes it. Like, there's not very many of us. We're really proud of being Marines. We love being Marines. We love other Marines. We hate the Marine Corps. And that's kind of how it works.
Is it once a Marine, always a Marine?
Pretty much.
Is that what I understand?
Yeah, it doesn't wash off. But then you get into MARSOC, which is part of JSOC, but they don't really know how to use them. They're still trying to figure all that out. You've got SEALs, you've got Delta, you've got Green Berets, all the Special Forces groups in the Army, and everybody kind of has a specific job. Like, Special Forces often means that the scope of what you are supposed to do just narrows up a little bit so that you can focus on it and be better at it. Would you say that's fair to say?
Yeah, I think so. I think to me the biggest differentiating factor is that one is the money and the time.
Yeah.
Because when you can have the same training, but if you can do 10 times as much of it, or you have a lot more rounds, so you shoot, like, we could go out and check out a can of ammo in our gun whenever we wanted to.
Right.
We go to the range every single morning. I know in other forces, it's not that easy. You're counting rounds, you're getting X amount of rounds to train with. You're not getting endless time. So I think that's a big.
I had to rent golf carts to train my Marines for tank formations because we didn't have enough money for fuel.
Yeah.
Really?
I think that's a big.
That's sad.
Yeah.
I think it was probably the highlight of their training. They had a great time.
I'm sure of that.
We figured it out, but it's dumb. We should have been doing that in tanks, not me going out to the golf course and saying, hey, I need 5 golf carts and my Marines are going to throw golf balls at each other while, the tank commanders give fire commands.
Yeah, that's funny.
But you do what you can.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
When in Special Forces in my era, and my era was long before any of this all came together. Mm-hmm. Let me just say this first off. I think they're better trained. I think they have better tactics than we had in my day. We were kind of learning as we went along, especially in Vietnam.
Well, I would hope that we would all learn from each other. And
we had the old OSS guys telling us how they did it in World War II in Germany, and then we had a jungle full of stuff and the swamps and everything else that Vietnam was made up of, and our people kind of learned, what worked, what didn't work, and it was a big learning curve. And just as I was getting out, Beckwith was starting Delta. And he was looking for people, and he was having a hard time dragging people into it. But today, what they've got organized is just, I think, so much better than what we had.
So, were you one of the first Green Berets?
No, I didn't get in until I got my beret in '67.
And it started in
'62.
I'd still call that one of the first.
There was a lot of people. I mean, they were in Vietnam since '59.
Yeah.
Not as Green Berets, but as advisors.
Right.
And I'm in the old school, if you will. I mean, we'd learned a lot by the time I got there, and they didn't use us the way they should have all the time.
Oh, that's normal. Yeah.
And a quick story, if you got.
Yeah.
I had 2 interactions with SEALs in Vietnam. One was on the Phoenix teams, which we don't ever go there, and the other one was in the Plain of Reeds in Vietnam. Another guy named Sergeant First Class Murphy and I were on a hunter-killer mission, walking through this swamp. It's all elephant grass, 8 feet tall, and you're walking through this swamp knee-deep in the water, and we're walking along, and we're being really quiet. It's just the 2 of us, and this is all a free fire zone. And we're walking along, and I've got the point, and Murph goes, listen. And I looked, and I hear, psst, psst, so, spin around, ready to empty a mag, and I hear, I'm an American. Don't shoot. I'm like, okay. And this guy parts the reeds and walks out. And he's a SEAL. He's carrying an automatic shotgun with a drum-fed automatic. And he goes, have you got a cigarette? I went, no, I don't smoke. And I looked at Murphy, and he goes, I don't smoke. I goes, okay, be careful. Turns around and goes right back into the bush. He was on a one-man patrol out there all by himself. Jesse knew who he was.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
No kidding.
Yeah, the guy was good. Let me tell you what.
Yeah.
He was good if he got by us.
Yeah. So what type of missions were you doing when you were in Vietnam?
Well, I did the Mike Force, and then we did hunter killers, which were 2 to 6 men typically, and then I worked with Phoenix teams.
Is hunter killer just like a small control? Do you have a high value target you're going after? What's that?
Usually there's a target you're after, either that or a prisoner. They always want prisoners.
Okay.
So you're always trying to look for the opportunity to take one. But then it's all conducted in a free fire zone. So anything that's in there shouldn't be there.
Okay.
So if you see them, you don't have to call for permission to shoot. You can just shoot. And I wish you guys had that in Afghanistan too.
Yeah, that sounds really nice.
Yeah, a little different ROEs.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You have to be bleeding before you can shoot back now. So
rules of engagement, right? Ours were called normal rules. You had to be shot at before you could fire. It was called normal rules in my day.
Yeah.
But then I went into SOG, and I worked SOG for 2.5 years.
What's that?
They call it Studies and Observation Group, but originally it was Special Operations Group.
Okay.
And I was up in the north, so we were going into Laos and following the Ho Chi Minh Trail and trying to, find it and locate it, destroy it, and wiretaps and, again, prisoner snatches if you could. And we ran that with 2 Americans, and my team was made up of 6 mountain yards.
Okay. And how did that go?
Well, it could get real hairy. They'd chase you with dogs. They got teams. They learned that we were there.
Yeah.
And they would chase you with dogs or anything else they had. They had special sappers that would track you if they figured out where you were going. And it happened often enough that most of our LZs we got shot out of.
Yeah.
So we'd have 3 or 4 LZs and do false insertions all the time.
Why do you think you survived?
I don't know the answer to that one. I really don't.
Do you think about it?
I try not to.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand that. It doesn't make sense a lot of times, right?
No, it doesn't make any. I mean, when the guy next to you gets it, the guy on each side of you gets it, and you're still shooting, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
It's just the luck.
Did you get hurt?
I've got 4 Purple Hearts.
4?
4.
God. Payden, how many you got?
I'm lucky.
0?
0, yeah.
Oh, man. I've got 2. 4, that's overachieving.
Well, yeah. I wasn't trying for them.
So what happened?
I got a bayonet in my hand.
Really?
Yeah, I took through here, and then I took a bullet through the face when I was in a helicopter, and then I took shrapnel in my shoulders and my legs.
Yeah.
And then I took a bullet in my leg.
Huh. What hurt the worst? Probably
the one in the shoulder.
Really? That hurt worse than getting shot in the face?
Yeah. Getting shot in the face. That's a horrible story. As we did the x-ray, the bullet broke into 3 pieces.
Mm-hmm.
It was an M16 round. It came through the side of the helicopter, and then it hit me through the fuel cell side. I had my feet dangling in the doorway. So it hit me, and it knocked me down, and I came up shooting. And the bullet broke in 3 pieces. One of them knocked out teeth and cracked other teeth. The other one lodged right behind my nose. And the third one lodged way up in my sinus cavities. And I spit that one out about 2 months ago. I carried it around for 50 years and finally had a cough attack. It had migrated down and finally coughed that one up.
Wow. You save it?
No, I gave it to Doc Lyle. Doc was a Navy doctor, did a lot with the teams. He was a good guy.
On the day that I guided my 100th elk, I had another piece of shrapnel pop out of my back. And I think there's still a little bit more in there because I struggle with some metal detectors at airports. Not all of them. They're very inconsistent.
They are, aren't they?
But, yeah.
I've had my thigh felt up a lot.
Well, it's free, you know.
Yeah, but it's not a thrill.
What are some lessons that both of you sort of took from your experiences that have helped you be successful afterwards?
That's a good question. I think a lot of it stems honestly from the ethos.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a very, very good first platoon, and we were all young. We had like 14 new guys, and in a platoon of typically 16 to 20, you have your OIC, your chief, and then usually a handful of older guys. But we were mostly new guys, so our older guys had their work cut out for them, and they were very good at it's instilling in us like quiet professionalism, being part of the teammate self, those type of things. Those are really, I think anybody can take those and apply those and be very successful, because even when you're working in a shop or working in a group or working in a company, if you're always thinking teammate self, you're always gonna be successful.
Let's break that one down a little bit for the people in the back.
Okay.
Teammate self.
Yeah.
How can somebody apply that to their life?
Always, I think, and it can be broken. You can say teammate self. I think you can say family, community, stuff like. You can input any words you want in there, but it's always just putting others before you, or putting what the main goal is before your own personal goals.
Yep.
Right. So if you're trying to grow a company and you're also trying to grow yourself, professionally, whatever it is, knowing that as you put time into that company, you're going to grow as well with it, but putting that there first. And what it meant in the teams a lot was not nearly as deep. It was when you get back from a dive, you take care of the team gear, you help your teammate take care of their gear, and then you break your gear down. Yeah. But if everybody's doing that, then everything's getting done at the same time, and it's done way faster, because you don't just have 10 people doing 10 individual things. You have a team of 10 people attacking a much smaller problem.
This is an old concept in the military too. Like, you go back to to like Indian warfare cavalry, it was horse saddle self.
Yep.
And the common denominator in all this is that self is last.
Yep.
I remember in training one time just getting burned alive by my company commander because he came in and we'd been out in the field for however long, and I was taking a shower. He goes, "Is your rifle clean and turned into the Army?" I was like, "Yeah, it is." And he goes, "What about everybody else in your squad?" I was like, "I actually don't know that." So I was worried about getting myself clean before I made sure that everybody's guns in the squad were taken care of. And that's a problem, right?
Yep.
And that was absolutely a selfish decision that I was making. And you lose military efficiency if you make those kind of decisions. And
Yep.
I think it can definitely be applied to business, to relationships, to all kinds of things. It doesn't mean don't take care of yourself. And
Yep.
some people get that twisted, right?
Yep.
You're like, well,
Absolutely.
take care of yourself last means don't take care of yourself. That's not it. You still have to do that. But it is last.
Yep.
What about you, sir?
I agree with what Payden said. I ran much smaller groups. We ran different types of missions, and I think that's characteristic of a lot. I mean, our missions can go anywhere from a day to 30 days. And correct me if I'm wrong, most SEAL missions are 1 or 2 days. And at least in Vietnam, they were topping out at that. They'd set up an ambush site, and they were
Yeah,
they were
it's
in
more
for
DA
breakfast.
type stuff.
But we were gone for long periods of time, and so when we got back, we had a lot of indigenous with us. That's part of what we tried to do, was bring the indigenous people in to help us fight. So usually we would break off, and one guy would go make sure the indigs had everything put away and they cleaned their weapons, while the other guy was getting beer and coming back so we could take care of our gear.
Team gear gotta happen.
I'm sorry?
It's team gear. It's got to happen.
Yeah.
The beer.
Beer, yeah. That's an important factor, especially, well, it was over there anyway. But most of my teams were small, so we didn't have big teams. We didn't have large platoons, and Special Forces has a lot of animosity in my day in it. I still judge Green Berets by if they have a CIB, Combat Infantryman's Badge, because you have to be under fire, engaged in combat for 30 days. In that time frame, you don't have to be shot at every day, but you're in there and you actually take live fire. And less than half had that CIB. There's so much administration and so much politics, and we were involved with the CIA in a lot of instances.
I've gone back and forth on some of that stuff. It's the combat action ribbon for the Marines. And a lot of Marines, it's very, very important that they wear that. You see the stickers on the cars and all kinds of nonsense, but they want it. And I saw Marines take excessive risk in order to get a combat action ribbon. I saw Marines fake stuff, fake engagements so that they could get combat action ribbons.
Yeah.
And I really hated that. And the other side of it, I have the utmost respect for combat veterans and the amount of support that I will give a fellow combat veteran is honestly above and beyond what I'll give somebody else, if I'm being honest. However, I know that there's nothing that I could do in combat without the support of a hell of a lot of people that we're never going to get shot at.
And I don't disagree with that. I mean, I think the old adage was, for every man on the front line, there's 7 people in support.
Oh, yeah, at least.
And I believe in that, and I'm grateful, believe me, for those. But in our group, I had one major that wanted to run a mission just so he could get his CIB.
Yeah.
And it didn't go well with him out there.
I don't like that.
I don't either.
And that's not military leadership. That's being selfish. It's stupid.
It's all political.
But it is something that happens, and it's worth acknowledging. What kind of knife did you carry when you were working?
I started with a Puma White Hunter.
Okay.
It was one I could afford.
What were the qualities of that knife?
It was solid. It was German built. It was solid. It had a big front blade. If you were going to use one, it had all the potential for anything you wanted to do with it.
Yep.
I carried that one, and then I carried another. I had a K-bar. They gave us all K-bars. But the Puma was my go-to weapon when I needed it.
Yeah. What about you?
I always carried a Winkler.
Did you?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
so trendy.
Yeah. Well, we were giving them. So.
Oh, you were?
Yeah.
That's cool.
So I actually lost it in the bob when I was guiding a couple years ago, which sucked.
Sucks.
Bummer.
Yeah, I always carried it scout carry. Even when I was in, I'd carry it behind my med pack.
Yeah.
I was always on my butt, and then I could just.
You guys didn't get K-bars?
We did when we graduated, but they're more decorative.
Ceremonial.
Yeah, it was ceremonial. It had a seal. Actually, mine was actually a UDT on it, and it was engraved, and I have it at the house. But
what is UDT?
UDT is basically before the SEALs, underwater demolition teams. That's where we kind of started.
Yep.
Those are guys going and blowing up Japs gullies and things like that, clearing beaches and we still do it during Budge. You go out with your thing and map the beaches out and check the tides and the real old school stuff. And yeah.
Fundamentals.
Yep, absolutely. And I'm glad, no matter how much the wars and warfare has changed, that's always part of BUDS, and that's good.
Where were you in Afghanistan?
I spent a little bit of time there. I was in Bath for about 30-some days. We flew in. We were on a blowout, so we flew in we were supposed to do a raid and then fly back home. So we were there for a little while. We spent way too much time there, and then they ended up kind of blowing the mission at the last minute, and then it was all over the news. But we didn't end up actually going on it. But it was interesting.
What happened if it was on the news?
We were there for an HR and
HR
hostage rescue, and they kind of buzzed it. I think they got caught on to us that we were there because it's middle of nowhere in the neighboring country of Afghanistan is where we were supposed to go, and they could hear the ISR, and they finally pulled them out and went, and we basically called them like, hey, here's 2 hostages. Either you guys go get them or we are. So they went, and a big firefight, and they actually grabbed them, and then we did an exchange on a tarmac versus actually going in and doing like a raid. Okay. So a lot safer, a lot better, because the team we were with, on deployment, we had lost a guy before that, and a bunch of guys got shot. But so it's a lot safer that way. But it was still kind of, you work out for something for 30 days, and you're there, and you want to do it, and then it gets kind of muddy like that. It kind of a bummer.
Who was the hostage?
It was a female American and then a Canadian male, and he went there to prove that basically they were good people. That the American media was portraying them as bad people. Well, then they got wrapped up for. I think they were there for like 8 or 9 years. She had 2 or 3 babies while in captivity. So I think we were expecting 3 children and all kinds of stuff. And she and the kids were in a hole, and he was sleeping with the males. And so it was an interesting dynamic there. But,
wow.
Yeah, it was interesting. But that was really the only time I spent in Afghanistan. I spent a lot more time in, North Africa, Djibouti, Somalia, Yemen, those kind of areas.
Anything kinetic?
Yeah, we did some stuff into Yemen, right at the turn of Trump's presidency.
Yeah, there were some Marines there at the same time. One of my buddies was there. That got a little spicy for a minute.
Yeah, I was on that one, and that was fun. That was an interesting one. We lost my TL, and then a couple other guys got shot. What you guys were talking about earlier about the guy on the left and the right of you getting hit, and that's exactly what happened. I was team leader in front of me, team leader right here, or the 2. He ended up being the team leader, but they both got hit and dropped right on each side of me, and we just kept going. But yeah, that time frame was pretty gnarly in there.
I'm sorry to hear that.
But no, it was interesting. But yeah, we did a lot with the Marines on that. Yeah. They missed the target on us. They wanted to shoot some new missile, like a HIMAR, some new missile system that they had, and we went to do a hit, and we could see the target, and they called us off, and like, they're gonna hit it with this, and then they shoot, and it's like the vehicle, ISR's lighting up the vehicle going this way, and then boom, like way over here, we're like, what just happened? It wasn't even close, and it was like there was a $500,000 miss.
Yeah,
wrong lead.
Yeah, and we're like, oops. But yeah, it was interesting.
We did a training exercise in 29 Palms one time, and it was tanks versus aircraft. It was tanks versus helicopters during the day, and we just found nice spots, shut down. The tanks became the same heat as the ground around us, and we won. We had lasers laser shooters and laser receivers on all the vehicles, and we beat the helicopters during the day and went back to the chow hall and talking all the trash that I could possibly talk, feeling pretty good. And then we went back out that night, and they had some jets up, and I remember looking over at my wingman with my night vision on, and it looked like he was parked under a street light, and I thought they had like a white headlight or something on. I picked my NVGs up, and there's nothing. Put them back down, and I called him on the radio, and as soon as you get shut down, your radio doesn't work anymore. And then suddenly the street light was on top of me, and I was like, oh, this isn't very fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've been painted.
Yeah. Yeah.
Gig is up.
Yeah.
Definitely.
There's nowhere to go.
No.
Yeah. So, when did you start making knives?
When I was 8 years old.
Really? So it's a lifelong thing.
I've been addicted since.
Yeah. Do you feel like you've made more knives or lost more knives?
Oh, I've made way more.
Okay.
Yeah. Somebody asked the other day how many I've made, and I'm like, God, I don't have any idea. I can go back a ways, and I'm probably around the 10,000 mark.
Yeah. And my understanding is that twice you made the best knife in the world.
My wife and I, yes.
Your wife and
my
you.
wife does. I build a really nice knife, a really good knife.
Yeah.
And then she turns it into art.
Okay.
I mean, she just is. Before cancer, she was a phenomenal scrimshaw artist. Just absolutely phenomenal. She didn't even know she could scrimshaw until I asked her to do one time.
What is scrimshaw?
Scrimshaw is where you take a very sharp object and kind of scratch into what the pattern you design you want to do. The old whalers used to do it on, whale's teeth and stuff like that, and sailing ships and all that stuff. And then you can put the ink into it, whatever you want. You can do it black and white or color. And then you have reverse scrimshaw, which I showed you that buffalo.
Yeah.
And a horn is made out of hair, and I think it's glucose. But when you pick it, the white hair comes out. And when you see that white buffalo, that's all that is hair.
No kidding.
Yeah. So, I mean, you don't get to screw up. I mean, what you get, when you pick it, you've got it. That's it. And she'll sit there for hours and pick at those things and do it. She's totally right-brained.
So if you are trying to build a knife for a competition like that you're going to submit against every other knife builder in the world, what's the real difference between how you're building that knife and how you're building, the knife that we're working on here today?
The knife itself, none. I mean, I want everyone that when you pick it up, it's got we call it the ooh-ah factor. It's got twice the ooh-ah. Once when you pick it up, once when you use it. It's all your buddies want it. Your buddies want to hold it. They want one like it. That's the goal, to have one like that. I mean, we have some of the knives we make are purely non-cosmetic. They're just pure functional blades. But at the same time, they've got to be perfect. If you're off a little bit, then the knife's not perfect. You want it. If you put your name on it, you got to be proud of it.
Yeah.
And then I give it to my wife after I've done something with it that's special. It's special Damascus or special something. And in those days when we were winning, we could use elephant ivory. So she would scrimshaw into elephant ivory. And the second one we won with is still at the Army-Navy store here in Kalispell. I don't know what price he's got it on it anymore. He's a fanatic on scrimshaw. And so she'll find something we've learned with knives, most of the people interested are interested in game animals on it. So that's been our theme with it all along.
I like it too. I want to see an animal on the box of bullets that I buy. There's been times that I felt like that's corny, but I actually think that it's really classy, and it's representative of that connection. And a knife does an interesting thing when you're working on an animal, because it connects you from the outside to the inside, and it's really, really special. You talk with surgeons, and they have a special relationship with their scalpel.
Yeah.
Hunters have a special relationship with their knife. There's always been that connection, and people have been using knives for way longer than they've been using fire. Like, this is the biggest part about who we are as a species, is our ability to use a knife.
I don't disagree with you. I mean, you got a knife in your hand almost every day.
Yeah.
I mean, whether it's the kitchen or something, you've got some sharp thing going on. So, I mean, it's Yeah, I've always been fascinated by them.
Payden, there's a lot of companies that like present themselves as veteran companies, and that's a big part of their identity. I think that civilians are a little bit lost as to what the expectation should be that comes with that. So with you guys working together, why does it matter to somebody who's buying a knife from you that the company is formed of a SEAL and a Green Beret?
That's a really good question. That was our second knife of the year. I think you give some credibility to what your claim is. Selling knives, a lot of times, like anything, it's all about the story that goes with it.
That's a stunning photo.
Now, she's phenomenal, isn't she? And anyway, the story counts. You know, Payden's got combat experience long after mine. Mine was, but I've had the expertise in building the knives. He's more in touch with the current, what's going on now, what people are expecting. And I think because of the legitimacy of who we are, I mean, this is going to sound really bad, but I'll put my combat experience against anybody's. I don't know many people that have more or have seen more than I have. And I hope they never have to, that anybody has to. And Payden's had his share with what he did with SEAL Team 6 and all his attack dogs and stuff. I don't have any concept of how that works. But he brings to the table, when we started this partnership, I've rejected 2 other partners to come in to work with me. And when Payden came along, it was kind of like, okay, come in, let's see what you do, what it is. Man, he's got that drive a spec ops guy's got. He's got that attention to detail. He's got that attention that everything's got to be just right because we're putting our name on it.
That wrestling background helps too.
It probably does. I'm not a wrestler. I mean, I wasn't. It was football for me. And
it's the only sport that I care if somebody puts it on their resume.
Really?
Yeah. If it's something else, you might as well just leave it off. But if you wrestled, even if it's just in high school, put that on your resume because it means something to a lot of employers.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be darned.
That's why the special forces, they're like 60-70% wrestlers.
Yeah.
If you break down, it's like 60-70% wrestlers, like 20-30% water polo players, at least for the SEAL teams, and then the rest it's like fractions.
Yeah.
Because most of them, it's mostly wrestlers.
Most of the SF guys were country boys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what in my era. I mean, I don't know what it is now.
You've got to learn how to work at an early age if you're going to be good at working.
Oh,
later.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And if you grow up in the country, you're going to work your whole freaking
Yeah,
life.
I remember my grandfather, I asked him could I have an allowance? And he said, I already had one.
Yeah.
I said, really? He goes, yeah, room and board. Get to work.
Mm-hmm.
That was it.
Yeah.
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
You know.
I think all the years I worked for my dad, I maybe actually got like 2 paychecks.
Yeah.
Nice.
He'd be like, oh, I bought you this, remember? And I'd be like, that was like $200. You owe me like $1,000. What do you mean? We've been working 12, 13-hour days and I haven't seen a dollar. He's like, I bought you lunch.
But you know, as a kid growing up working like that, I loved every minute of it.
Yeah.
You know.
So I still feel like we haven't quite answered the question for people. Why should they care that if they're just thinking about the product, right? If they're just thinking about the knife, why should they care about your backgrounds?
I think
That's a darn good question.
I think it just legitimizes it, but it gives you, like, if you were to go to anybody on the street and be like, I want to buy a knife from you, like, what's the experience that you've brought into designing this knife, right? And it's like, well, I watched some YouTube videos and I just enjoy making knives. It's like, all right, well, maybe you're a very good knife, but like, what experience has gone into that knife?
Yeah.
Like, why do you want to shape it this way? Why do you want the handle like this? Why do you want, and it's like, well, because it's correct, or what? It's like, well, our designs are going to come from a place of like a utilitarian type, like, no, this is what we would use overseas. Like, we have knives that Thomas has here, sitting here, that were designed by people and designed by himself that they've been used overseas. And it's like, well, you know what? We used it. We brought it back. We didn't like this. So it's been combat tested, brought back, changed, sent back out, you know, and it's got years and years of experience and expertise behind it to back up not just another pretty knife.
With massive consequence if it fails.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then another thing is you guys are are both have experience being big game guides in the West.
Yep.
That's huge to combine those two.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we know what we need to do. Is I was an avid hunter my whole life, and as a kid, we had subsistence hunting. We had to, so I've always hunted. And
Yeah.
I knew what kind of knife I wanted. Didn't always have that one, but
We had subsistence hunting when I was a kid too, but I think the technical term is poaching.
well, that's more of a modern term. It doesn't apply to anybody over 70. Yeah, it was what we were doing. That's a fact.
Yeah.
But I mean,
It's all right. It's all right. And I know people are going to light me up for saying that some poaching is justifiable, but some poaching is justifiable.
people got to eat.
Yep.
And I don't disagree with that.
And wildlife is held by the state in a trust for the public. And part of the reason that wildlife is important is not just to fill out niches in the ecosystem. It's because it is a reserve food source. During World War II, they closed elk hunting in the state of Oregon for 2 years.
I didn't know that. Yeah.
Yeah, I just learned about this recently myself. And I think there's a couple reasons for it. It was the last 2 years. So I think part of it was we need a reserve source of protein. So we're going to preserve this for everybody. I think another part of it was they wanted fewer reasons for men to stay home.
Yeah.
And but the impetus for that, I don't fully understand. But no, we do need to consider our wildlife as a food source, as a sustainable one, and we need to make sure that it stays that way. But no, there's still plenty of people out there that kill venison for meat illegally so that they can feed their families, and still do so in a responsible way. And while some people are going to have a problem with that, I'm not going to count myself among them.
Payden made a comment a moment ago about why our knives should be more credible than a lot of them. Is that when I've done a lot of shows over the years, and you watch somebody pick up a knife, you know exactly if that guy knows what he's doing or not.
Yeah.
Is he holding it like he's going to hunt with it, he's going to skin with it, or is he just gripping it, or is he trying to do a Jackie Chan with it?
Yeah.
You kind of watch that and you know who's real, who's not real. When Payden walked in, he started picking up knives, and this man knew how to handle a knife. He knew what it was about, and he knew that it was going to be used for this or it was going to be used for that. And you don't want to get into the hatchet today, I'm sure.
Well, no, we can. I will say that I rode a motorcycle 16 hours to come out here and meet with you guys to design this with you, and that we've got a project coming along that when it's ready, we'll let everybody know about it, and they can get on the list to get one themselves.
But it took the design of three of us to get the product that came out right.
Yeah, and it's super fun to sit down here and go from all three of us drawing on here to moving it through the various stages that people see in this little video that I'll make. And, the product is going to be a collaboration of three people from very similar backgrounds who have had different lives that, I'm fortunate to be able to sit in the room with the two of you and work on something together. It's pretty awesome. This is a great day.
Jesse,
it's a lot of fun.
I speak of Jesse. Jesse was a SEAL, my era. And one of the most incredible men I've ever known, ever. And we were somewhere, and somebody said, "Thank you for your service." And Jesse came up with the most beautiful comment I ever heard. It was, "Thanks for being somebody worth fighting for."
Yeah.
And I've kind of hung on to that one. I don't use it all the time, but there's people I do use it on.
And that's a big reason, right?
It is.
And there's a lot of folks out there that are not living in a way that feels like they deserve that type of gratitude right now.
Yeah.
But that's the nature of freedom.
That's it. It's your choice. It's what we fought for.
Yeah. So, that isn't the way I would expect them to spend that dollar. It's theirs to spend, I guess.
That's exactly right. And we all fought for the same thing.
Yeah.
We may not like the way it came out, but that's what we fought for.
Yeah. Okay. Parting advice to to a young person that thinks that they want to be a SEAL, that thinks that they want to be a Green Beret, that thinks they want to be a Marine, what advice do you have for them?
I get contacted a lot. I actually just did in the gym the other day about people who are like, well, I got a friend that wants to go to Buds. And I always say the same thing. It's like, well, Buds is a challenge, but it's a little blip. You know, it's a speed bump in the road. You have to really want to do the job. Like, you have to fall in love with the job and what it is to be a SEAL, not just, I want to test myself and go to Buds. That's just part of it. Like, yeah, definitely, you know, you want to push yourself. You want to see what you're made of, go to Buds. And I didn't believe it in Buds. They were like, this isn't the coldest, the most tired, anything that you're going to be. Buds is not that hard. And then you're like, no, there's no way it's going to be harder. And you get the SEAL teams, you do some stuff, and you're like, wow, no, they were not kidding. Yeah. It is way harder. So you have to want to do the job, and you have to love the lifestyle and the job itself, not just the sex appeal of going to Buds or going through any sort of selection course of, oh, I'm going to see how hard I am afterwards. It's like, no, that's just a little piece, you know, that's just to see if you've got what it takes to do the rest of it. Yeah.
I love, the SEALs have a saying that I absolutely love. It's the only hard day.
The only easy day was yesterday.
The only easy day was yesterday.
Yeah.
You know, and that's really, there's a lot of wisdom in that. Mm-hmm. I mean, not just for the military, but in life in general. Absolutely. My son went to Buds, went to SEAL training. I told him don't.
Yeah.
You know, I don't recommend that for anybody.
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't either. And I'm glad that people do it. It's a big risk because it requires a certain amount of luck to make it through, just due to injuries and illness and stuff like that. And if you don't make it and that's the kind of job that you wanted, there's not much of that in the rest of the Navy. Yep. So if you want to do a gunslinger job, then Army or Marine Corps is going to be a lot better option for you. But I am glad that people are willing to take that big risk, because there's a handful of really specialized missions that the SEALs are the best at doing. And
I'm glad they're there.
We're still going to need guys to do that. Yeah. And you know, they also make my favorite sunglasses once they get out.
Yeah, I got to get me a pair of those.
Right. Knew it.
Yeah, after Payden was telling me about it, I'm like, okay, I need a set of those.
Yeah. So, no, they're really good at looking cool. I think that's
ABCs.
Yeah.
Always be cool.
Oh, yeah. Jeez.
Don't get lost. Yeah. If you get lost, continue looking cool.
Yeah. ABCs.
Okay. If somebody decides that they want a Rucker knife, how do they do it?
They can go to the website, Shopify.
Well, yeah, it's just the regular website. We just finished setting it up.
Okay.
What is it?
ruckerknives.com. Just straight out.
Yeah, you can call Payden or myself, either one.
Yeah.
Phone numbers are they're on the website.
I think so. To contact us, yeah. Or social media. We're on Facebook and Instagram and Pinterest and all post all the pretty nice pictures on Pinterest for people to look at.
Nice.
But, yeah, Instagram's rucker.knives, and then Facebook, you just search Rucker Knives, I think.
Cool. And there's links to all this in the podcast description as normal. We've got some more work to do here this afternoon, gentlemen, and I'm looking forward to learning more from you. And I want to thank you both sincerely for hosting me and for taking the time to talk on the show today.
Thanks for coming out, man. We appreciate you.
Appreciate it.
Cool.
Fun.
In the United States, there are about 15.2 million hunters. That's how many hunting licenses we sell in the country. And they spend around $21 billion per year, which breaks down to an average of $2,800 per hunter. Now, we need to be really smart about how we spend that money. You can't spend it on stuff that's going to break. Otherwise, you have to buy something else again, and you end up costing yourself even more. We also need to be smart about how much weight we carry in our packs, because that's a serious limiting factor. One way to remove about 5 pounds out of your pack without sacrificing your ability to find animals is to get rid of your spotting scope and tripod. Now, there's a time and a place for those things, and I carry both of them a lot. But if I need to go lightweight, I'm going to carry stabilized binoculars. And The best stabilized binoculars I have ever used are from Sig Sauer. They are the Zulu 6, and they just came out with a new pair called the Zulu 6 HDX. I use the 12 power magnification model. They weigh 21.5 ounces, and they have 2 modes of stabilization. So you throw the lever forward once, and that's going to stabilize the image. If you turn it off and turn it back on again, that's going to stabilize it even more. And I'm not kidding, it is more stable than if you're glassing from a tripod. It is absolutely incredible. You're going to be able to see stuff at just incredible distances and really break it down. Like, you're going to be able to tell the difference between a Billy and a Nanny mountain goat at a mile. You're going to be able to actually see if there's a kicker coming off that 4x4 muley that just popped up over the hill. They work great at early and last light. They work great at highlight. They fit really well in my hands. Like, this was one of the first products that I asked Sig to make when I started working with them. And to no surprise, they were already on it. They were way ahead of me. But this is a really good piece of gear. I highly encourage you look into it. You can go to sigsauer.com, look for the Zulu 6 HDX. Comes in a few different magnification settings, but the one that I like the best is the 12 power. Check it out. Thank you all very much for listening. I'm going to keep bringing you these stories from normal people just like you who have done extraordinary things. Everyone is an expert at something, and they have interesting perspectives on life and work and the environment and all of the things that we care about. I'm going to keep bringing that to you. And I want to thank you so much for making this show possible. I also want to thank Emily Bratcher for producing this show. She does a great job editing. Really appreciate her. I want to thank John Chatelain. He did the art for the Six Ranch podcast. And Celia, soon to be Harlander, she digitized that so that we can get it out there on the internet for you. Also want to thank Justin Hay for writing this original music and the beautiful whistling that you're listening to right now. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much. Please keep listening to the show. Write me a review if you feel like it, and just keep doing your thing, and we'll all learn from this together. It's been fun, and we're just getting started.